Admittedly, I've never considered the realm of catharsis and attributed the antique store environment being a fitting destination. And the more now that I think about it, in part because of Rare Objects, it's compelled me to consider this. And we're going to look at the project in a greater depth in a minute, both with the synopsis and the trailer. In case you're unfamiliar, I want to give you that baseline, because the trailer came out today. I'm not sure how well known this project is. But I look at the pitch and I consider its antique store attribution of a woman seeking therapy. And I'm like, in the experiences I've went just venturing into an antique store, which has not been that often, but I've gone in different areas of not only my state, in different states as well. It is a generally pleasant experience. It's almost like, maybe as a close comparison, walking through a classic art studio and just looking at pictures that are done masterfully. I specify classic because if I say art museum these days, people immediately think, well, like a modern art museum? No. There's a distinction that should be made. But an experience like that, being in the surrounding of the arts, especially when it's such capable work, can be an enthralling and cathartic, perhaps therapeutic experience. And that's what Rare Objects is centering around. So the basis of this project I'm pretty fascinated by in terms of in how I reanalyze my own past and consider maybe how I felt in particular situations where I didn't necessarily regard the feelings at the time that I dealt with. Maybe like the character that Katie Holmes is playing. She's the lead cast here, immediate draw for me. And there's, of course, other cast members as well, but Katie Holmes, I've seen her before. I've quite liked her work. And the piece is based on a novel as well. I'm not sure exactly at the moment the novel's name or the writer. I'll attribute that in post. But I like projects in terms of adapted works. I mean, it might be a bit of a broad mix, to be sure. Not every translation is perfect, especially when you consider different mediums of storytelling. But it gives the project, I think, a greater depth of appreciation. Of course, that depends again on the faithfulness of the translation, but at the same time, I'll be open to Rare Objects because I quite like this pitch. If you've not heard of it before, this is what IMDb has to say about it. Rare Objects tells the story of a young woman who seeks to rebuild her life when she takes work at an antique store. She regains her confidence from the kind souls who own the shop until those from her traumatic past begin to resurface. In an antique store, though, I mean, that's such an interesting setting to pick. I'm trying to think of perhaps other films that follow along those lines, and while there's plenty of films that have documented different paths of therapy people might take, especially in terms of maybe places that they decide to work at. I mean, I didn't realize that was the dynamic of the character that Katie Holmes is playing, that she's actually working at this antique store. I guess I skimmed over that. But yeah, being in that type of environment, especially for be hours on end during your workday, and perhaps the art in itself in some way, or these antiques, connects to her past, or maybe to a more pleasant time. There's a real psychological foundation I'm sensing here going in. I could be wrong. We'll see from the trailer in a minute what they have to offer, but I quite like this pitch. It's very sophisticated, a bit unique, at least films that I can think of recent past, even of what I watched. Oh, Katie Holmes is directing this too. And she's writing it. Now, she's got a lot of influence here. I'm really curious now, even more so than I was. Like, even when I gave a preliminary look at this, I'm like, I obviously didn't consider every detail. This is getting more fascinating by the minute. Let's just look at the trailer and consider this for ourselves. But Rare Objects is impressing me at this point. I don't know when it's releasing. Maybe the trailer will announce that date. We'll see. Currently, IMDb says it's in post-production. So, maybe soon. Maybe with some time. I'm looking at it today, though. Let's consider what Rare Objects has to offer.
I'm Benita.
I'm Diana.
How long have you been here for?
Too long. I'm hysterical, delusional, depressed, manic. But you know what? It's not in here that makes you crazy. It's out there.
IFC Films, I've heard of a couple of their projects. They're pretty good.
I'm here for the sales position.
Good psychological baseline thus far.
And assisting clients. To be attentive, yet unpresuming. Knowledgeable, yet unpretentious. The skill I most require in this job is being able to tell a story.
When did you get out?
A couple days ago. No one knows you were in the hospital, right? Don't tell anybody.
No, I wasn't. I wasn't planning on it.
Second chances.
Yeah. Second chances.
Your father would be so proud of you.
Dramatic past. I like this.
The finest pieces my partner sends back from his travels. Finding the most unique objects is his passion.
It's quite beautiful, at least in the antique store side, too.
A woman of many talents.
Very
Just
pleasant props to look
the
at.
wounds of some hearts aren't always visible to the natural eye.
I'm gonna take some time off from school.
So many people would do anything to get an education. You have to count your blessings.
Why aren't you at work? Are you okay?
It's just a lot of new things. New job, living back at home again.
Can I ask you something? What happened to you?
Sometimes when I see the city from here, I can't believe I actually take up space there.
You have to find the things that make you happy. And joy is what gets you through the day.
I don't know what I'm doing with my life.
One foot in front of the other.
There's a very inviting personality. I feel
Japanese
welcomed
culture,
in.
The belief is that the cracks, the breaks, and their mending becomes an intrinsic part of the life of an object. An object becomes more beautiful because it's been broken.
Really good scripting. That's a beautiful line, and isn't that so true to life? I mean, it's sad still that we have to go through the brokenness, perhaps, but it is that transformational process that makes it builds us forward, especially from hard situations. Again, I'm not necessarily sure, having not read the book this is based on, what the trauma at the center of his story is. It seems, again, very psychological and probably emotional in nature. That's what I sense from it, especially on part of the scripting, which is great. I love the indie flair. Again, I tend to cover a broad range of visual content on this channel, especially within the cinema space. And yeah, there's plenty of commercial films that are quite great. I don't want to necessarily be putting myself in a position where some would say, are you dissing, commercial work? No, I don't mean that. Indie flair, for me, expresses a strength that I just don't see in other places, especially within the more major studio-run film side. There's more individuality, more creativity, and a film like this I find very unique. And in terms of painting a fitting experience, it feels like the people behind the movie, imagining a lot of that probably goes to the credit of Katie Holmes, maybe some of the other crew members as well, they're staging a believable experience that fits very well to the pitch. I don't feel in any way maybe that it's limited in resources. It feels quite realistic, very easy to connect with in terms of a resident life. Just walking through an antique store, maybe you haven't gone for an antique store. I'd recommend it, depending on perhaps the contents of the store, but usually you see some brilliant types of crafts, especially along, let's say, historical constructions. I mean, we didn't give this away to an antique store. We still have it in the family. I've got a armoire that's when was that made? It's Victorian, and I think it came from I think it was made in 1775. We've kept it as a family heirloom, apparently for multiple generations. And it's a beautiful piece. It's got this nice, faded, I mean, it's aged quite a bit in terms of the original painting, but it's got this nice, floral pattern on the front. It's like a scarlet color. I'll see if I can put a picture up of it, but it's a nice cabinet, right? Visuals like that they can bring in a certain element, I would imagine, of catharsis and just staring at art. You feel at peace. And for somebody that perhaps is in a bit of a tumultuous situation, whatever the basis and the context of that situation might be, someone might need that baseline. And it seems that there's, if I'm gauging this trailer right, maybe the character that's actually being affected by the trauma is, I think it'd be Benita, played by Julia Mayorga. I might have that wrong. I'm just going on the pictures on IMDb, and she looks like the same character that I saw in the trailer. It might be an interaction with, maybe Katie Holmes is going for the same thing, but I sense a cathartic relationship between these two that's probably going to blossom out of whatever the trauma was. Were they pictured in the hospital together in the trailer? Because that would be... Yes, they were. So there was already a pre-established relationship with these ladies connected there. And there's that point for healing of, I would assume, both of them. I find that pretty good. Again, it looks like a very strong project to me. In competency and delivery, they don't specify, as far as I'm aware, a release date here. I'm sure they'll advertise one soon. IFC Films, I have gauged a couple of their works. I know their projects might be, at least in my experience, are some of the ones that I've covered, less potent in circulation. But they're exquisite in quality, and they express themselves as high-caliber work. I would imagine the same will be true with Rare Objects. I like that name. Now that I look at it and really consider the context of it within the piece, especially on that last line. The script, again, for this I find quite exquisite. This is a good picture. I'm going to keep an eye on it. But I'm quite impressed with it. I hope for some of you that's the same story. I would imagine it is. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below on it, if you so wish to disclose your perspective, of course. I'm not sure how I'll watch this yet. I mean, sometimes I don't necessarily make it to the theaters for half the films I want to see. And I say, like, oh, I'd love to be able to be in the cinema for this. Some of them I end up watching more so on streaming. I mean, we don't even know how this is going to release yet. It might be a streaming exclusive. It might get a limited theater release. Maybe it had an awards run. I don't know. But or maybe it's going to. I'm not exactly sure. I would believe it if it did. I'll keep an eye on Rare Objects. I quite like what I'm seeing here, at least on the first introduction. I would love to see the evolution of this movie broaden itself out. I think perhaps you only need one trailer to be specific. If there's like a featurette or something to get a better window on the project and the effort that went into the creation of the work, maybe so we can learn more about it. Maybe I'll engage with that. Of course, if there is another trailer, I will look at that in the future. But I will definitely keep an eye apprised on when this is releasing. And I will try to keep attention circulating on the channel if I can for a movie. So perhaps that for some of you that maybe you're not... You maybe like this again, you weren't aware of Rare Objects earlier on. A film like this, I would believe, at least on first introduction, deserves a grander spotlight. Indie fare doesn't always get that circulation. I try to help projects along that I truly see as... Well, I try to help projects and give a hand up when I can generally. But there are films in particular I feel like deserve more of a recognition. Rare Objects, I believe there's a strength to it that speaks to that. Thank you so much for watching this video. Before you bounce, feel free to drop a like and comment, subscribe to this channel with a ding on the bell, and share this video with your friends. And consider checking out the description here. There you'll find links to my other channels, as well as addresses to my other social media accounts and ways you can help support my work if you feel so inclined. May God bless you, and looking forward to when our paths cross again.